What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Beneil Dariush responding to Conor McGregor saying he was a nobody. Conor McGregor is always handing out insults, and this time his ire was centered right at lightweight contender Beneil Dariush. Dariush is in the mix for a potential title shot or a fight to get to a title shot on account of Charles Oliveira being stripped of his title by the UFC for missing weight by half a pound at UFC 274. While McGregor is slated to return from injury later this year, it's unclear when and who he would fight. He's previously called out welterweight champion Kamaru Usman and now former lightweight champ Charles Oliveira, to name a few. McGregor has stated that he would rather fight at welterweight, but again, the UFC is still not sure when he'll be available exactly. He's clearly no stranger to Twitter and the delete button, and that's perhaps why, in his latest deleted tweet, he went after the relatively quiet and respectful Beneil Dariush. In a recent deleted tweet, this is what McGregor said: "Beneil Dariush is the biggest nobody in the business." Now, Dariush is responding to McGregor and stated this while on the UFC Unfiltered podcast.
I'll just take his the fact that he deleted as a form of apology. But no, I was thinking about it. To be honest with you, I feel for the guy because, man, he's been fighting the last couple of years and it hasn't been going so well.
Dariush goes on to talk about McGregor's recent record of having lost 3 of his previous 4 fights, his severe leg injury last year that put him out for almost a year at this point, and the fact that he's now likely surrounded by people who only know him after the fame and fortune. Dariush was slated to take on Islam Makhachev for the #1 contender spot for the lightweight belt, but that's a bit up in the air at this point given the fact that Oliveira was stripped of the belt and is now the #1 contender himself. But what do you think about Dariush's response here over Conor's deleted insult? Marc Goddard explains why Jiri looked like he tapped in the UFC 275 main event. The light heavyweight title fight this past weekend at the Singapore Indoor Stadium was one for the ages. Glover Teixeira and Jiri Prochazka went to the brink in a full-out war for about 24.5 minutes. Ultimately, Jiri tapped out Glover with a rear naked choke in the final minute of the 5th round to earn the undisputed UFC light heavyweight title in just his 3rd fight for the promotion. However, some fans online were curious about what they believed was Jiri tapping out to Glover prior to that. In a tweet to referee Marc Goddard, who was in charge of the action in this fight, one fan asked Goddard about that perceived tap of Jiri, to which Goddard responded with this: "LOL, Jiri was actually congratulating and encouraging his opponent. He'd done it a couple of times and I told him it's a risky game, LOL, but it's very clear what he was doing and intending. Let's celebrate the incredible feat from both gentlemen." In the aftermath of this fight, Jiri did say he was playing mind games with his opponent, and he did have some words to say to Glover throughout the bout. Meanwhile, Glover, who is not at all protesting anything that happened in this fight, he's asked to run this back. What do you think about Goddard's response to what Jiri was doing in this fight? And do you want to see a rematch between Glover and Jiri? Ronda Rousey says she would return to MMA, but only if she fought... Ronda Rousey last stepped into the octagon back in 2016 when she lost to Amanda Nunes at UFC 207, but in the years prior to that, she had been on an unprecedented run for a female mixed martial artist and was the name for women's MMA for quite a while. Ultimately, her run ended and she transitioned into becoming a professional wrestler, where she has enjoyed massive success for the WWE and is currently the WWE SmackDown Women's Champion. Rousey is firmly out of the MMA game, and she has no plans to return anytime soon or ever. However, there is one name that would lower her back into the cage, and that name is familiar to many. Case in point, this is what she said in a recent appearance on the Kurt Angle show.
Gina Carano, she's the reason why I got into fighting. Wow. She's the reason why I knew it was a possibility. I will always be forever grateful. And
she definitely was the frontier.
Yeah, and if she ever was like, "Ronda, I want to fight you tomorrow at, 205 pounds, like whatever the hell you want."
Carano is a women's MMA pioneer, having earned the Strikeforce women's featherweight title. She lost her title to Chris Cyborg all the way back in 2009, and she hasn't looked back since. The now 40-year-old Carano has moved on to a career in the entertainment business and doesn't look like she'll ever be mounting a comeback to the cage, nor does she need to. 4 years after Carano left MMA in 2009, Rousey was crowned the first UFC women's bantamweight champion in 2013. and she defended her title 6 times successfully before ultimately dropping the belt to Holly Holm in 2015. She lost to Nunes the year after that and hasn't been in the octagon ever since. What do you think of Rousey saying that she would only come back to fight Gina Carano? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on all of the latest fight news. DC says Valentina Shevchenko was saved by the clash of heads at UFC 275. Valentina Shevchenko had her biggest test to date as a champion at UFC 275 when she took on Brazil's Taila Santos. Ultimately, the judges awarded Valentina the win following a strong performance in the 4th and 5th rounds. But according to Daniel Cormier, he believes that the accidental clash of heads in the middle of the fight severely affected Santos as her eye began to swell, almost completely shut. Case in point, this is what DC stated during the UFC 275 post-fight show. It was an accidental clash of heads that ultimately, to me, really did determine how this fight was going to play out. There is no reason for me to believe that anything was going to be different because every round Santos was able to do the same thing, get the takedown. But in round 4 and round 5, Valentina showed her championship mettle. She showed that desire to retain that belt because she went forward. She threw caution to the wind, and she really did put it on Taila Santos. I thought Santos won that fight. During the post-fight interview, DC got to ask Santos about her eye, and she said that she saw 2 Valentinas and was just trying to get a hold of one of them. Many fans also agree with DC in that they scored more rounds for Santos due to the amount of submission attempts and takedowns that she earned against the champion, plus the control in the ground. While the win is Shevchenko's 7th as UFC Women's Flyweight Champion, some are calling for a rematch between these two. DC, however, believes that in a rematch, Valentina will have made all the necessary adjustments and will be making it much more difficult for Santos to get a win. Do you agree with Cormier that the clash of heads that led to the swelling of Santos' right eye was the main thing that turned this fight in Valentina's favor? And do you agree with the decision from the judges here? Dominick Reyes says Jon Jones was holding up a potential rematch for the light heavyweight title. In early 2020, Dominick Reyes was on his way to stardom. He was 12-0, getting ready to face Jon Jones for the light heavyweight title. In February of that year, he took on Jones and brought him to the brink, going a full 5 rounds against Bones and looked real good doing it. Some felt that he won that fight, but the judges thought otherwise, and Jones was giving a unanimous decision victory. While Reyes lost that fight, he still had a lot of momentum. After all, he went toe-to-toe with Jones while several people called for a rematch. In fact, he says that that was the original plan, but COVID-19 hit, and that was the end of that. Jones vacated his title to move up to heavyweight, and Reyes fought Jan Blachowicz and Jiri Prochazka in September and May 2021, respectively. He was finished in both of those fights by TKO and KO, respectively. Now, days after watching the last guy he fought win that same title that he came so close to winning, the 32-year-old reflects on what could have been, and he admits that the UFC did indeed have plans to run this fight back. But Jones continued to ask for more and more money before the pandemic hit. This is what he told Ariel Helwani.
The whole thing was, we're going to run it back. And then it was like the pandemic started. And then I don't know what he started doing at home. He started feeling a different kind of way. And then all of a sudden it was, no, I'm going to heavyweight. Screw that. There's too much risk. I don't get paid enough to fight him. I'm not going to fight him again without double. You got to pay me double to fight that guy again. And it was like, what?
After losing to Jiri last year, Reyes went back to Houston, Texas to regather himself and get back to his roots. He's still training, and while it's unclear when he'll fight next, he absolutely plans to continue to make a run at the title whenever he does step foot in the octagon again. But what do you think about the UFC's plans of possibly running the Reyes-Jones title fight again? Would you have liked to see that fight? And do you think Reyes can still make a run at the belt now? Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.